Cinema's essence lies in the artistic manipulation of elements, allowing for subjective interpretation and
The essence of cinema is its ability to capture and present reality objectively, offering a genuine connection to the world.
Technology should serve the artistic vision, not dictate it.
Technological advancements enhance cinema's ability to authentically capture and present reality.
No, I don't care if they're not actors. I want realism.
A class grounded in realism. Nice work.
The debate over realism in film is lengthy and complicated. And the term realism is frequently used to describe films that shock us as not being manufactured. To understand the theory of realism in film, we must understand realism itself. Realism is a point of view that conforms to independent nature, known things, or a perception of existence, and whether any human thinks or perceives them. Realism is defined as a literary and artistic style that emerged in the 19th century as a reaction against Romanticism's poetic and whimsical tradition.
Realism over Romanticism.
As a result, the goal of realism was created as a means of telling a story with greater realism. Literary realism portrays reality accurately. The audience can more easily identify with the situations and personalities because they see a different part of themselves or their own job experiences. Hence, acting is significant to the viewer. Particularly marginalized communities are when the characters are not seen thinking or reflecting on their existence, where reality might help the spectator discover community and remind the viewer that they are not alone. Here, we will look at how cinema theorists and scholars deal with the issue of realism to try to answer questions such as: what makes a movie realistic, and what is the relationship of cinema with reality? Although there are many theories about realism in the arts and literature. But when we talk about cinema specifically, the theorist André Bazin is at the forefront.
André Bazin might say.
To explain Bazin's theory of realism, we must divide it into two parts. In the first section, Bazin wrote about the medium of the film itself and its relation to reality under the title of ontology. The second part has been written about the stylistic models that cinema can follow to get closer to reality, and it is under the title of aesthetics. According to the critic, he argues that throughout history, all the arts yearned to immortalize their subjects so that they could survive through the ages. Thanks to the discovery of perspective painting, which was able to replicate the image seen by the human eye, this made painters strive to get the closest image to reality until photography arrived.
It has arrived.
Therefore, Bazin considers that the camera is mechanical, not human, and biased. It has objectivity in transmission, meaning that the image is captured exactly as it exists at a specific time. He believes that photography freed the visual arts from their duty to convey the truth of a replica. It means that painters can abandon these preoccupations and move to more abstract forms of expression. At the same time, photography and cinema have a different responsibility. According to Bazin, even if cinema does not fulfill its function of shaping reality and trying to transform it, nothing can rob it of its relationship to reality. Bazin says that cinematic language should seek to reveal the truth, and this means using this direct method. The relationship it has with the thing that must be investigated and all its existing aspects revealed, but not noticeable to the naked eye. And here comes the role of aesthetic realism in the film. We do not look at how the film was made in this way, but we mostly look at the style and subject matter. According to Bazin, the most important debut in the history of American cinema was Wells and William Wheeler's introduction to depth of field within the well-established language of Hollywood. Although the method used by the director is still in favor of the narration that leaves little room for interpretation in the depth of the image, in the field, that makes the viewer in a relationship with the image closer than the image they enjoy. This means, therefore, a mental activity on the part of the viewer, a more positive contribution to the work in progress, and allowing an ambiguity of expression. But he admits that even in these movies, depth of field can be used. Reality is allowed to take precedence over narration because the viewer can choose how to approach the place they are looking at rather than fixing their gaze in a specific place as in a montage. To find films that are less exciting and more realistic, we must go to Europe, and Italy in particular, the birthplace of neorealism, says directors like Roberto Rossellini are determined to do away with montage in the reality sequence on the screen, so that the work appears in the film without interruption. That is, as one realizes in life. For example, in Umberto di 1952, the character Maria is shown performing a series of mundane tasks. The one who gets up slowly and goes to the kitchen begins to perform a series of actions without interruption, and as Bazin describes it, moment by moment, instead of connecting us with a chain of cause and effect. We note here the continuity of daily work without interruption from the montage. She cooks and grinds coffee perfectly, moment by moment. This is what makes viewers amazed at the realism that exists.
I don't want realism, I want magic.
Arnheim is one of the pioneers of the Gestalt school of science, which is a field of perceptual psychology whose ideas generated that our perception of the world is in the wholes, not the parts. And from here, Arnheim began to expand in different aspects of perception and art. But it transforms reality, and hence the idea of Arnheim began aiming that film as an art because it not only records reality mechanically, but also changes the normal ways in which the human eye perceives it. Arnheim believed that work of art is visual thinking and means of expression. Not just a grouping of colors and shapes together, but also a field of raw visual data that is produced through artistic elements, and that helps people understand the interpretation of sensory and emotional perception based on artistic data. Arnheim also argued that cinema will only be able to reach the heights of the other arts when it is freed from some photographic reproduction and becomes a pure work of man, in the sense that film should not avoid registration altogether by turning to animation. And he also considers that every film has already those formal pictorial adjectives, but sometimes we forget them because we think about the content first and the final form second. Based on the theory of formalism, how technical elements shape conscious and unconscious perception through partial deception, which means that the film is always at the same time a flat postcard and a live-action scene. But Arnheim made his transition from partial illusion to what he calls twofold effects, which mean it is possible to produce a double imaginary effect through a smart location of the camera and choosing the appropriate angle. Thus, this effect is important in not only creating an artistic impression, but also in showing the subject in a distinct way that creates a sense of satisfaction for the viewer. In 1902, A Trip to the Moon was released, an adventure film directed by Georges Méliès. The story of the film revolves around a group of scientists who decide to discover the moon. Scientists travel through an artillery capsule. Scientists have a group of adventurers with selenite-dead inhabitants of the moon. The elaborate graphics also relied on distinctive costumes, which made the film characterized by a theatrical nature. The film relied on unrealistic narration, which tells the story in an unrealistic way. The narration is considered secondary to the scene. We also do not forget to use effects and animations that are in line with the technical aspects of the film. The movie Matrix was released in 1999, which was directed by Wachowskis. The story revolves around a virtual world called the Matrix, which was created by computer machines whose aim is to train people and force them not to use batteries for their benefit. Cybernetic devices implanted through which humans can live in virtual reality. The film includes a series of events full of fighting and philosophical questions. This movie is one of the formalities, and this is due to the cinematography, especially the green tint that was prominent inside the Matrix, which gave the Matrix an illusion in relation to a blue color, which represented the real, harsh world. These scenes emphasize this technology in artistic visual scenes. And we also do not forget the sound design, such as the iconic sound of bullets rushing in the air. And the ringing of the phone, which created a sense of conflict and a feeling full of tension. These techniques helped in telling visual stories from a Formula One artistic perspective, which led to the creation of an atmosphere full of adventure. In 2010, Alice in Wonderland was directed by Tim Burton. The story of the film revolves around Alice returning to Wonderland after reaching the age of 19 to be surprised that most of its creatures have turned to the side of evil, to find herself in the middle of the struggle of the White Queen. And during the confrontation, she finds good friends who help her overcome the matter. The film is considered one of the most important films to which the formal theory was applied, because the film relied on visual arts and innovative graphics. And this can be seen clearly on the characters. Techniques such as cinematography were used, which were able to make the viewer love in a strange and imaginary world, as well as visual effects that emphasized the fantasy and dreamlike aspects. The film focused on storytelling techniques and avoided traditional narrative structures, which resulted in a distinctive and unique interpretation of the story.
In the end, we know what the theory of realism and formalism is according to Bazin and Armiham. We can now compare them. In the middle we have the classics. Realism. Classical. Very few movies are at the extreme ends, and they all tend to combine the two major tendencies. When discussing these two prominent traits, it is vital to realize that they exist on a continuum, and that most films are a combination of both tendencies. Formalism and realism are two approaches on cinema form that are closely related. Each has a unique perspective on what film should be and how it should be used. The Soviet Union, formalism began to gain coherence in the 1920s, and its two fundamental thinkers were Sergei Eisenstein and Rudolf Arnheim. Theorizing behind realism gained traction in the 1930s, with later proponents, including Andrei Bazin and Siegfried Kracauer. Although the discussion between these viewpoints did not fully take off until the 1930s, there has always been a schism in how the medium has been employed. The Lumiere brothers' films between 1895 and 1901 attempted to chronicle scenes from ordinary life, but Méliès employed cinema as an expressive medium that focused on the value of mise-en-scene in the building of imagination, realistic characteristics, It focuses on the ordinary, banal, and unremarkable aspects of life. Without any added effects or meaning, the shots are more objective. The camera is often framed at eye level, reflecting human activity and movement. Shots are frequently immobile on a tripod or have little movement. Without any extra flair, the lighting and composition feel open and random. Locations are frequently genuine places rather than staged sets. The emphasis of editing is on continuity and is not intended to distract in any manner. Music and audio are diegetic, meaning they are designed to emanate from the outside world.
Characteristic of formalism, it's considered the classic Hollywood style. Its focus is on creating entertaining films which audiences can enjoy. Shots are more subjective and meant to add effects and meaning. The camera can be framed up with different angles, levels, and lengths to add variety. Shots usually incorporate movement to make them more active and enjoyable. Lighting and composition are meant to draw the viewer into the action. Locations are often on controlled sets, which aid in production. The focus of editing is on story and entertainment, not necessarily continuity. Music and audio can be non-diegetic to make the film more exciting. In the end, thank you so much for listening. We hope the video essay was clear and enjoyable. Best regards.